Helena Blavatsky's most revolutionary contribution to understanding human nature emerged from her systematic exposition of the ancient wisdom teaching concerning the threefold constitution of the soul, a doctrine that had been preserved in the mystery schools of Egypt, Greece, and Tibet for millennia. In The Secret Doctrine and the Key to Theosophy, published in the late 1880s, she revealed knowledge that challenged both Christian orthodoxy and materialistic science by presenting a sophisticated framework for understanding the complex nature of human consciousness and its destiny after physical death. According to Blavatsky's exposition of the master teachings, the widespread confusion about death and the afterlife in Western culture resulted from the loss of precise knowledge about human constitution that had been deliberately concealed from the masses by religious authorities who preferred simplified doctrines that could be more easily controlled. The ancient wisdom, preserved intact in Tibetan monasteries and transmitted to her by the Mahatmas, revealed that what people commonly called the soul actually consisted of three distinct levels of consciousness, each operating according to different laws and possessing different destinies after the dissolution of the physical body. This threefold division of the soul corresponded to the ancient Egyptian teaching of the Ka, Ba, and Ak, the Platonic understanding of the appetitive, spirited, and rational aspects of the psyche, and the Vedantic classification of consciousness into lower, intermediate, and higher principles. Blavatsky demonstrated that all authentic esoteric traditions had preserved this same fundamental understanding, though expressed in different terminology and symbolic systems appropriate to their cultural contexts. The practical implications of this knowledge were profound, as understanding the true nature of human constitution provided the key to comprehending not only what happens after death, but also how to live in a way that ensures the most favorable post-mortem conditions and continued spiritual development. The masters revealed that ignorance of these principles was the primary cause of human suffering, and the perpetuation of negative karmic cycles that trapped souls in repeated patterns of unconscious rebirth. The first and lowest level of the soul in Blavatsky's system is the Kama Rupa, literally meaning desire form in Sanskrit, which encompasses all the passionate, emotional, and instinctual aspects of human nature that bind consciousness to material existence. In her detailed analysis found in The Key to Theosophy, Blavatsky explained that the Kama Rupa consists of the vital essence that animates the physical body, combined with the entire complex of desires, emotions, and automatic mental patterns that most people mistake for their true identity. This lower soul operates primarily through the astral body and includes what modern psychology would recognize as the unconscious mind, the emotional nature, and all forms of conditioned responses and habitual patterns developed throughout life. The Kama Rupa serves as the vehicle for experiencing pleasure and pain, attraction and aversion, and all the dualistic reactions that characterize ordinary human consciousness. It contains the imprints of every emotional experience, traumatic memory, and passionate attachment formed during physical incarnation. According to Blavatsky's exposition of the ancient teachings, the Kama Rupa possesses a semi-independent existence that can persist for varying periods after physical death, depending upon the strength of the desires and attachments that formed it during life. This astral shell retains memories and personality characteristics of the deceased individual, leading to the widespread confusion about the nature of spirits and ghosts that appear in seances and psychic phenomena. The Kama Rupa can manifest through mediums and produce apparently intelligent communications, though it lacks the true spiritual consciousness of the departed soul. The master teachings emphasize that the Kama-rupa represents both the greatest obstacle to spiritual development and the necessary foundation for conscious evolution, as the desires and emotions it contains provide the energy required for all forms of activity and growth. The goal of spiritual development involves not the destruction of the Kama-rupa, but its purification and conscious direction toward higher purposes, transforming selfish desire into universal compassion and personal will into divine service. The second level of the soul in Blavatsky's exposition is manas, the Sanskrit term for mind or consciousness, which represents the truly human aspect of our nature that distinguishes us from both the animal kingdom below and the spiritual beings above. In The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky described manas as the reincarnating ego or individual self that persists through multiple incarnations, accumulating experience and gradually developing spiritual faculties through the evolutionary process of conscious learning and growth. Manas operates as a bridge between the lower personal nature dominated by desire and instinct and the higher spiritual nature that connects with universal consciousness. This middle soul possesses the faculty of self-awareness, rational thinking, moral discrimination, and the capacity for abstract thought that enables human beings to comprehend universal principles and make conscious choices about their spiritual development. The manas contains the permanent records of all significant experiences and lessons learned throughout multiple incarnations. Blavatsky explained that manas itself could be subdivided into lower manas, which becomes entangled with the desires and emotions of the Kama-rupa, and higher manas, which maintains connection with spiritual principles and serves as the vehicle for genuine wisdom and compassion. The degree to which an individual develops higher manas during physical life determines the quality of consciousness that survives death and the capacity for continued spiritual progress in post-mortem states. The crucial importance of manas lies in its role as the seat of individual choice and moral responsibility. As this level of consciousness possesses the freedom to align itself either with the lower desires of the Kama-rupa or the higher aspirations of the spiritual soul. The entire process of human evolution involves the gradual elevation of manas from its initial absorption in material concerns toward conscious identification with universal principles and divine purposes. This transformation represents the central work of spiritual development and determines the ultimate destiny of individual consciousness. The third and highest level of the soul in Blavatsky's system is buddhi, the Sanskrit term for spiritual wisdom or intuitive consciousness that represents the divine aspect of human nature and the vehicle for direct spiritual experience. In her most advanced teachings found in The Voice of the Silence and the esoteric sections of The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky described buddhi as the principle that connects individual consciousness with universal awareness and provides the foundation for all genuine spiritual realization. Buddhi operates beyond the realm of rational thought and emotional experience, representing a form of direct knowing that grasps universal truths immediately without the mediation of mental analysis or sensory perception. This spiritual consciousness embodies the principles of universal love, wisdom, and compassion that constitute the essential nature of divinity manifested within human beings. The development of buddhi consciousness marks the transition from human to superhuman evolution and the beginning of conscious participation in cosmic purposes. According to the master teachings transmitted through Blavatsky, buddhi remains largely dormant in most human beings, though it serves as the source of all authentic spiritual inspiration, moral intuition, and compassionate impulses. The rare individuals who develop active buddhi consciousness during physical incarnation demonstrate the possibilities inherent in human evolution and serve as bridges between ordinary humanity and the spiritual hierarchy that guides planetary development. The awakening of Buddhi consciousness requires the complete purification of the lower nature and the conscious sacrifice of personal desires for universal good. This spiritual transformation cannot be achieved through intellectual effort alone, but requires sustained practice of meditation, selfless service, and the cultivation of universal compassion. Those who achieve stable Buddhi consciousness during life continue their evolution on higher planes after death, eventually joining the ranks of the masters who guide human spiritual development from behind the scenes of ordinary history. Blavatsky's detailed exposition of the death process, based on the ancient wisdom preserved in Tibetan texts and confirmed by the direct observation of the masters, reveals a complex sequence of events involving the gradual separation of the different levels of consciousness and their redistribution according to their respective natures and destinies. In The Key to Theosophy, she explained that physical death marks only the beginning of a sophisticated process that continues for extended periods as the various principles of human nature sort themselves according to their degrees of refinement and spiritual development. The initial stage of death involves the withdrawal of the life force or prana from the physical body, accompanied by the gradual cessation of vital functions and the beginning of the separation between the etheric double and the dense physical form. During this phase, which can last from several hours to several days, depending upon the individual's constitution and circumstances of death, consciousness remains connected to the dying body through the silver cord described in esoteric literature, allowing for the possibility of resuscitation under certain conditions. As the etheric double completely separates from the physical body, the astral form, containing the Kamarupa and lower manas, begins its own process of gradual dissolution and reorganization. The strength and coherence of this astral entity depend entirely upon the character and intensity of the desires, emotions, and mental patterns that were cultivated during physical life. Individuals who lived primarily for material pleasures and selfish purposes create dense astral forms that persist for extended periods, while those who developed spiritual aspirations form more refined astral bodies that dissolve more quickly. The master teachings emphasize that the period immediately following death represents a crucial opportunity for the consciousness to orient itself toward either higher or lower influences, depending upon the spiritual preparation undertaken during life. Those who had developed some degree of spiritual awareness and practiced meditation or other consciousness-expanding techniques often experience a natural gravitation toward higher planes, while those absorbed in material concerns remain trapped in the lower astral realms, where their unfulfilled desires continue to torment them. Following the initial separation of principles at death, the lower soul, or Kamarupa, enters what Blavatsky termed Kamaloka, literally meaning place of desire, which represents the astral realm where the passionate and emotional nature undergoes a process of gradual purification and dissolution. In The Key to Theosophy and other writings, she described this intermediate state as serving a crucial function in the post-mortem journey, allowing the consciousness to release its attachments to physical existence and prepare for either reincarnation or progression to higher states of being. Kamaloka is not a physical location, but rather a state of consciousness characterized by the continued operation of desires, emotions, and mental patterns that were formed during physical life, but can no longer be satisfied through material means. The experience of this realm varies dramatically depending upon the spiritual development achieved during incarnation, ranging from intense suffering for those dominated by selfish desires to relatively peaceful conditions for individuals who had begun to purify their lower nature through spiritual practice. The duration of existence in Kamaloka corresponds directly to the strength and persistence of the emotional and desire patterns that bind consciousness to material existence. According to Blavatsky's exposition of the master teachings, individuals who lived lives of intense passion, hatred, or selfish ambition may remain in this realm for centuries, gradually exhausting their astral energies through futile attempts to satisfy impossible desires. Conversely, those who had developed some degree of spiritual detachment may pass through Kamaloka in a matter of days or weeks. The ancient wisdom reveals that the experiences in Kamaloka serve an educational purpose, forcing consciousness to confront the consequences of choices made during physical life and providing opportunities for the release of negative patterns that would otherwise be carried into future incarnations. This purgatorial process, when understood correctly, represents a compassionate provision of cosmic law that ensures no soul remains permanently trapped by its mistakes and ignorance. The key to minimizing suffering in Kamaloka lies in the conscious purification of desires and emotions during physical life through spiritual practice and ethical conduct. After the completion of the purification process in Kamaloka, the higher aspects of human consciousness enter what Blavatsky termed devachan, derived from the Tibetan word meaning the happy land, which represents the heavenly state where the spiritual essence of the incarnation is assimilated and prepared for future evolutionary development. In The Key to Theosophy, she described devachan as a state of conscious bliss where the soul experiences the fruition of all positive aspirations and spiritual efforts undertaken during physical life. Devachan operates according to entirely different laws than either physical existence or the astral realm of Kamaloka, as consciousness in this state creates its own reality based upon the highest thoughts, feelings, and aspirations that were cultivated during incarnation. The individual consciousness, now freed from the limitations of the physical brain and the distortions of the desire nature, experiences perfect fulfillment of every noble dream and spiritual vision that was held during life, regardless of whether these aspirations were realized in material circumstances. The duration of the devachanic state varies enormously depending upon the amount of spiritual capital accumulated during the preceding incarnation, with periods ranging from decades to millennia according to the depth and intensity of the spiritual development achieved. Those who live primarily for material concerns experience only brief periods in devachan, while individuals who dedicated their lives to spiritual pursuits, artistic creation, or selfless service enjoy extended periods of conscious bliss that prepare them for more advanced incarnations. According to the master teachings transmitted through Blavatsky, devachan serves multiple purposes in the evolutionary scheme, providing rest and renewal for the reincarnating consciousness while also allowing for the complete assimilation of lessons learned during physical existence. The experiences in this heavenly state strengthen the spiritual nature and create momentum for continued development in future incarnations, ensuring that genuine spiritual progress is never lost, despite the apparent setbacks that may occur during individual lifetimes. The ancient wisdom revealed through Blavatsky's teachings demonstrates that the three levels of the soul follow distinctly different paths after death, each according to its own nature and degree of development during physical life. This sophisticated understanding resolves many apparent contradictions in religious and psychic teachings about post-mortem survival by showing how different aspects of human nature experience different destinies, rather than the entire personality surviving intact as commonly supposed. The Kama Rupa, or lower soul, being composed primarily of desire and emotion, lacks the spiritual substance necessary for immortal existence and gradually disintegrates in the astral realm unless artificially sustained by mediumistic practices or intense emotional attachments from living individuals. This dissolution represents a natural and beneficial process that releases the reincarnating consciousness from the burden of negative patterns and emotional debris that would otherwise contaminate future incarnations. The memories and personality characteristics contained in the Kama Rupa may persist for varying periods, creating the phenomena of ghosts and spirit communications. But these manifestations lack the true consciousness of the departed individual. The manas, or middle soul, follows a more complex path, depending upon its degree of spiritual development during life. The lower manas, being closely associated with personal desires and material concerns, may become temporarily trapped in kama loka until purified of its grosser elements, while the higher manas, containing the permanent spiritual gains of the incarnation, proceeds to devachan, where it assimilates the lessons learned and prepares for future development. The extent to which manas survives death in full consciousness depends entirely upon the spiritual work accomplished during physical existence. The buddhi, or higher soul, being essentially divine in nature, remains unaffected by the death process and continues its eternal existence on the spiritual planes, where it serves as the repository of all evolutionary gains achieved throughout the entire series of incarnations. For most human beings, buddhi remains largely unconscious and operates primarily as a guiding influence. But for those who have awakened this spiritual principle during life, it becomes the vehicle for continued conscious existence and eventual liberation from the necessity of further incarnation in matter. Central to Blavatsky's teaching on post-mortem existence is the operation of karma, the law of cause and effect that determines the specific conditions and experiences encountered by consciousness after death based upon the choices and actions performed during physical life. In The Key to Theosophy and other writings, she explained that karma operates with perfect justice and precision, ensuring that every individual experiences exactly the consequences appropriate to their level of spiritual development and moral conduct. The karmic forces generated during incarnation determine not only the duration and quality of experiences in Kamaloka and Devachan, but also the timing and circumstances of the next rebirth. Those who created positive karma through selfless service, spiritual practice, and ethical conduct enjoy peaceful transitions, brief purifications, and extended periods of conscious bliss, while individuals who generated negative karma through selfish actions, harmful intentions, and spiritual neglect face more challenging post-mortem experiences designed to educate consciousness about the consequences of its choices. Blavatsky emphasized that karma operates as an educative rather than punitive force, providing exactly the experiences necessary for consciousness to learn the lessons required for its continued evolution. The suffering experienced in Kamaloka results not from divine punishment, but from the natural consequences of choices that violated spiritual laws, while the bliss of Devachan represents the natural fruition of efforts directed toward universal good. This understanding removes both fatalistic despair and complacent self-satisfaction, replacing them with the recognition that individual effort and choice determine future conditions. The master teachings reveal that understanding karma provides the key to preparing consciously for death and ensuring favorable post-mortem conditions. By cultivating pure motives, performing selfless service, and developing spiritual faculties during physical life, individuals can minimize their time in Kamaloka, maximize their conscious enjoyment of Devachan, and prepare for more advantageous reincarnations. This knowledge transforms death from a fearful unknown into a natural transition that can be approached with confidence and preparation. Blavatsky's exposition of the ancient wisdom concerning death and the afterlife was intended not merely to satisfy intellectual curiosity, but to provide practical guidance for living in a way that ensures the most favorable post-mortem conditions and continued spiritual development. In The Voice of the Silence and other works, she outlined specific practices and approaches to life that prepare consciousness for the death transition and maximize the opportunities for spiritual progress in post-mortem states. The fundamental preparation for death involves the systematic purification of the three levels of the soul through the cultivation of pure desires, the development of spiritual wisdom, and the awakening of compassionate service to all life. This process requires the gradual transformation of the Kama Rupa from a vehicle of selfish gratification into an instrument of universal love, the elevation of manas from personal concerns to cosmic understanding, and the awakening of buddhi through meditation and selfless devotion to the highest spiritual ideals. Daily spiritual practices such as meditation, ethical conduct, and the study of wisdom teachings serve to strengthen the higher principles of human nature while weakening the hold of material desires and personal attachments. The masters taught that regular meditation is particularly important as it provides direct experience of consciousness independent from physical form, making the death transition less traumatic and more conscious. Similarly, the practice of selfless service develops the spiritual faculties that ensure survival of consciousness in higher states after death. The ancient wisdom emphasizes that the moment of death itself presents a crucial opportunity for spiritual advancement, as the consciousness temporarily freed from physical limitations can achieve insights and realizations that might require years of effort under normal circumstances. Those who have prepared through spiritual practice can use the death transition as a moment of conscious spiritual advancement, while the unprepared may lose this opportunity through fear, confusion, or continued absorption in material concerns. Among the most challenging aspects of Blavatsky's teaching on post-mortem existence concerns the specific conditions that result from premature death through accident, violence, or suicide. Situations that create unique complications in the normal process of consciousness separation and redistribution. In The Key to Theosophy and other writings, she addressed these difficult questions with the precision and compassion characteristic of the ancient wisdom, revealing how violations of natural law create corresponding disturbances in post-mortem experiences. According to the master teachings, premature death disrupts the natural rhythm of consciousness evolution by terminating physical existence before the intended lessons of the incarnation have been completed. This creates what Blavatsky termed earthbound conditions, where the consciousness remains attached to the physical plane through unfulfilled desires and incomplete karmic obligations, unable to proceed normally through the post-mortem states until the natural lifespan has been exhausted or the disrupted patterns have been resolved. Suicide represents the most severe form of premature death, as it involves the deliberate violation of the fundamental spiritual law that requires consciousness to complete its evolutionary lessons through sustained effort rather than escape through self-destruction. The individual who commits suicide discovers that death provides no relief from the mental and emotional patterns that motivated the act, as these conditions persist in the astral realm, where they cannot be resolved through physical action but must be endured until their natural exhaustion. The ancient wisdom reveals that souls who die prematurely often remain in a state of confused suspension, unable to progress to higher planes but unwilling to completely release their connection to physical existence. These conditions explain many psychic phenomena involving restless spirits and haunted locations, as the earthbound consciousness seeks to complete its interrupted existence through contact with the living. Understanding these principles provides both explanation for such phenomena and guidance for helping these unfortunate beings through prayer, meditation, and conscious assistance from those capable of communicating across the planes. The culminating teaching in Blavatsky's exposition of the soul's journey after death concerns the ultimate destiny of human consciousness and the path toward liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth that characterizes the evolutionary process in matter. In The Voice of the Silence and the most esoteric sections of her other works, she revealed the ancient wisdom concerning the possibility of conscious immortality and the achievement of permanent spiritual freedom through the complete integration of the three levels of the soul. According to the master teachings, the repeated journey through incarnation, death, and rebirth serves the evolutionary purpose of gradually refining consciousness until it achieves complete spiritual development and no longer requires physical embodiment for continued growth. This liberation, known in Sanskrit as moksha or nirvana, represents the natural culmination of human evolution and the beginning of cosmic service as a conscious agent of divine will. The achievement of liberation requires the complete transformation of the Kama Rupa into pure compassion, the elevation of Manas to cosmic consciousness, and the full awakening of Buddhi as the vehicle for divine wisdom and universal love. This integration creates what the ancient wisdom terms the immortal body or diamond soul, a spiritualized form of consciousness that persists eternally while maintaining individual identity and the capacity for conscious service to evolving life throughout the cosmos. Blavatsky emphasized that while liberation represents the ultimate goal of human evolution, the path requires countless incarnations and sustained spiritual effort across vast periods of time. Nevertheless, understanding this destiny provides the ultimate context for comprehending the meaning of individual existence and the purpose of the death and rebirth cycle. Each incarnation offers opportunities for progress toward this goal, while each death provides rest, assimilation, and preparation for continued advancement. The ancient wisdom thus reveals death not as an ending, but as an integral part of the magnificent journey toward conscious immortality and cosmic service that represents humanity's divine inheritance and eternal destiny.